Superhero Chat.
Hello, and welcome to Superhero Chat, a production of Bronco Television, brought to you by the Department of Communication at Fayetteville State University. I am your host, Professor Jonathan Chestnut from the Department of Performing and Fine Arts. We have 4 panelists today's show: Dr. Cary Adkinson, a returning panelist and a professor in the Department of Criminal Justice; Dr. Heather Griffiths, a returning panelist and professor of the Department of Sociology; Ivana Woodard, a first-time panelist, nutrition student at Westchester Community College, and a former Marvel intern; and Garrett Steedly, a first-time panelist but FSU alum and local business owner of Gamers Guild in Spring Lake, North Carolina. Ivana, tell us a little bit about the internship.
Well, it was a program through my high school. I applied and I got in, and it was very hands-on based. We did a lot of artwork, and most of the things that we worked with was before the Disney and Marvel merger. So a lot of the artwork we worked on through that, and did some projects, and that was pretty much it.
So you got to do art for Marvel.
Yeah, I did. I got to do art. Well, I didn't actually draw in the comics. That would have been awesome, but no, it was mostly a lot of teaching. So
did you get to meet anybody? Anybody we would know?
Well, C.B. Cebulski.
Okay.
I don't know if you know about Dan Buckley, the head publisher, but that's actually who.
We are that big of nerds. We know the publisher.
Okay.
You're among friends.
This is a safe environment. But it sounds like it would have been great. I would have loved to have done something like that as a high schooler. Garrett, most of us are familiar with your store. I know I've given you a lot of my money in the past.
Thank you for that.
You're welcome. Tell us a little bit about Gamers Guild.
We're located in Spring Lake. We've been serving area gamers for about 20 years. I've been the owner for about 7 of those. We sell tons of card games, board games, miniatures games, and we run lots of events for those games. And a lot of us are huge comic nerds, so that's why I'm here.
Cool. It's always good to be among nerds. Well, and welcome to both of you. Thank you for being panelists. Today we have a great show for you. As you can see by the backdrop, today's theme is DC versus Marvel. Which universe is better? Both comic universes have a long, rich history, great villains, great heroes, and a large fan base, but neither is perfect. Each has its fair share of weak stories, failed movies, and painful reboots. So during Free Talk, let's discuss the pros and the cons of each universe and see if we can come to a consensus as to which universe is better. Panelists? And sadly, I'm badly outnumbered.
Well, John, I'll tell you what. To me, DC has always seemed extremely establishmentarian.
That's a really good word, establishmentarian.
All the classics.
That's a professor level
I'm
word.
serious.
I'm
Are
smart.
you a professor?
SART. My point being that the Marvel characters, to me, were always the rebels and the outcasts and the geeks given unimaginable power, which they suddenly goes right to their heads, But DC, look at Superman, look at Wonder Woman, red, white, and blue all the way. Batman is the only character in that universe that ever even set a toe over the line.
Okay. Well, apparently I'm the DC person. So I'll start off the fight because y'all need ammunition. Personally, my problem with Marvel is they're too scared to do anything. They won't reboot their universe. They try to reboot it and then they go, oh, well, that didn't actually happen. They tried it in the 90s. They tried it again, and the reboots just never seem to take. DC, at least, when they say, everybody wants to complain about the New 52, but the Green Lantern, Hal Jordan, Barry Allen, they appeared in the 60s. They were reboots from the 40s. So DC does establish reboots. In the 80s, Crisis on Infinite Earths, the classic of all reboots. They destroyed everything and then brought it back and rebuilt it. They changed the way Superman was envisioned. And that's what they're doing now. They're rebooting. Marvel keeps dragging along these same stories, and they don't want to reboot anything because they're afraid to risk it. Whereas DC, while the characters may be more powerful and everything else, they really care about keeping their universe fresh and everything else. I mean, right now, what war did Tony Stark get the shrapnel in his heart in?
Vietnam or Korean War, wasn't it?
It was Korean to start with.
Yeah.
But now in what universe? If he got that in Korea, how old would he be?
Well, and they always said that about most of the X titles too. They don't age. They're just kept perennially in their late 20s. Although originally they were designed to be like 16, 17, and that was the audience. I mean, at this point, they would be what, in their 60s?
Easy.
Yeah.
Easy. I mean, you think Franklin from the Fantastic Four, Reed and Sue's
Perpetually
kid?
young.
Yeah, he hasn't even gone to first grade yet. And he was born in like 77 or something. You would think by now he'd be like running for president or something.
But you know, The Simpsons have successfully done that for what, 25, 30 years now?
But the Simpsons don't parallel real life.
And I have to throw in too that although I am a Marvel person, I have to say that if you're gonna know a series, you gotta know what's actually wrong. Well, not series, but know what's wrong with your company. For example, they might as well just call Marvel the Avengers. Like they might as well just, I'm sorry, but it's just like, you know, Young Avengers, you know, Avengers this, Avengers that, you know.
Well, X-Men might have a competition for that.
Yeah, but you know, it's just, it's basically centered on just one thing. Like, you know, if you ask someone off the street, what kind of, you know, what comic do you read? You're gonna tell you, oh, I read Avengers this, Avengers that, you know.
Well, I don't think any. I definitely think DC is more guilty of having a universe that's like centered around like its core characters, like the Trinity. You know, I think Jeff Johns has brought it away from that a little bit with his work on Green Lantern and Aquaman and such. But I think Marvel's always had a more diverse array of characters. I mean, yeah, you've got the Avengers as a focal point now, but you've had the Avengers, you've had the X titles, Spider-Man. Those have all been largely, I mean, they've had crossovers. Not to mention like all the cosmic characters that they randomly year to year do some major stories with. And while they don't age their core cast like maybe like they should, I think they've always done a better job of establishing like newer characters or younger characters. You've had the New Warriors, you've had New Mutants, X-Force.
But see, you can play. We can play the Teen Titans, the Outsiders. The original run of the Outsiders was amazing. I mean, let's not even dare to bring out the Watchmen. I mean, that reinvented how people perceive comics. Or talk about, I mean, and I talked about Crisis, where they destroyed their entire cadre of characters and then reinvented them again, and that was in the 80s. I mean, Captain Atom went from being a B-rate character from Fawcett Comics, maybe it was Fawcett, was it Fawcett?
I think so, yeah.
I think he was a Fawcett character, but they had bought them out in the 50s or 60s, and then they republish them and reinvent them, and now he's showing up in the Justice League as a regular reappearing character in Young Justice cartoon. I mean, those are the kinds of things that I see. While they're not, I would love to have like a Spider-Man type character, and they tried. They tried with Blue Beetle. They've tried with Robin. I mean, Robin was about the closest.
Yeah.
And Nightwing and Robin are about the closest to a good Spider-Man character. You know, but they're just overshadowed by the anger of the Batman. It's hard to get out of that. Whereas Spider-Man tends to be a very standalone character.
Wasn't that what Marvel was trying to do with the Ultimate Universe, though? They were trying to kind of branch out and tell different stories from a different perspective to kind of keep them new and updated with kind of modern
without sacrificing the history that they've established over the.
Yeah.
But see, that's just it. You know, if they had the guts, they should have jumped into the Ultimate. The original run of the Ultimate Spider-Man was amazing.
Yeah.
The re-envision of the Avengers was amazing.
Ultimate Fantastic Four was really, really good to start with as well.
They've gotten burned before, though. Do you all remember the 2099 series?
Yeah.
But that goes to a lack of commitment. And Marvel's bad for undercutting their creative people. You know, they get a good run going, and then they say, okay, well, we're going to take y'all out and put y'all over here on this failing book, and we're going to take these two guys that are still kind of new, but the book is selling, but we'll stick them over here and risk it. And then that book just straight down.
Well, like in regards to that, you know, like the New 52 was like, you know, very hyped, and it was very, you know, very ballsy like move. But they hyped all these creative teams for all these books, and how many creative teams lasted past 4 issues?
Yeah, that's true.
You know, if they're going to really get revitalize these characters and put together some really like on paper like some really amazing like, you know, talent. then if they were that committed, then why didn't they last long enough?
Right.
Why didn't they last longer?
Mm-hmm.
And see, the big thing that I didn't like, now you mentioned John's. I loved his Green Lantern stuff, but they didn't. When they did the reboot with 52, they decided not to reboot Batman and not to reboot Green Lantern because those were selling. And I was kind of like, yeah, if you're going to reboot it, reboot everything. And that's what they should have done. I'm told we need to move on. Well, thank you very much for that discussion. I'm sure we could go on for that for hours. And
Definitely.
And of course, I'd win in the end.
Except for when I
Except for when you
beat
talk,
you.
of course. Maybe some outside assistance could help. That being said, we'd like to return to a segment we call Superhero Video Chat. We call upon our friend from Florida, Becky Holland, who graduated from Fayetteville State in the area of digital arts in the visual arts program several years ago, long time ago, who now works as a graphic artist. Becky, what do you say?
Marvel versus DC, DC versus Marvel. This is the age-old question of all comic geeks everywhere. And to answer that question would be the answer to all things in the universe. Which is better, DC or Marvel? That is the ultimate conundrum. That being said, in my house, DC rules the roof. I'm sorry, it just does. My 4-year-old loves Superman. My 4-year-old obsesses over Green Lantern and refuses to go to bed without his power ring. And personally, I've always been an Amethyst Princess of Gem World girl. It's a closet thing. Don't worry about it. It's just an obsession. So, in my house, when it comes down to it, DC would win. That being said, I don't have anything against Marvel. Marvel has great stories. They've got great characters, and their movies make $1 billion bucks. So, I guess it just depends on your age group and your genre, which one you like best. Personally, I like the DC. See, there it is.
It's now time to answer some superhero questions submitted by our fans. The first one comes from Timmy, one of our friends from Facebook. Why reboot an entire stories or even universes to catch up new readers instead of just reprinting the originals?
Because there's more money.
That's
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah,
Exactly.
because they can cover both bases. They still reprint the old stories and Marvel Masterworks, the DC compilations of older stories as well. So I think they're able to kind of do both, actually.
Yeah, and there's something about coming to the table late, and people that are just starting to read books, and they walk in, and while they can buy the back issues at almost any comic book store. You're talking about a lot of money, a lot of time, a lot of things. Whereas these reboots, it says, okay, this is a fresh new universe. You can jump in on the ground floor and you can ride the big ride with the rest of us. While you may not know, I mean, to be honest, I haven't really kept track about this new Superman. But I've got friends that they've been Superman fans and they're loving the new Superman. I'm like, I miss the shorts, but can't have everything.
I would just argue that I don't think it's necessary to do a reboot to educate new readers. I mean, like you said, Marvel, they're not really known for hard reboots, but they're able to take characters in new directions, or when they launch new titles, they do a fairly good job of educating a reader. Like, for example, the new Guardians of the Galaxy series that's starting. They did a Guardians of the Galaxy 0 issue that kind of revamped and caught people up on the origins of Star-Lord. Instead of they made it available like the original stories as a Masterworks, you were saying. But they just wanted to update the artwork, kind of tweak the origin, and kind of prep the character for mass appeal, like the movie that's going to be coming out next year. So I don't think you necessarily need a hard reboot to do that. You just need to be smart about how you reintroduce that character or reintroduce
how you publicize
that
it.
team.
Yep.
Exactly.
Well, I think in defense of the idea of rebooting, some of the things like the science of stuff, like the original Flash got his speed because he was exposed to hard water, which we found out later hard water isn't really going to do anything to anyone. So when they rebooted him in the 60s, lightning hit this wall of chemicals and it fell on Barry Allen and he got super speed. And so they were trying to make the origin fit be more believable. It's kind of like the Ultimate Spider-Man.
Yeah.
Rather, I mean, who's going to have a radioactive display that a spider can get into and then get out of and bite somebody, and where high school students can go? You're talking huge lawsuit. There's no way anybody's going to do that. But they take it to a lab, and a genetically enhanced spider gets free. You know, we all know about genetics now. There's new science.
We're more scientifically literate culture
Yeah,
in a lot of ways.
we're moving up as we want our stories to keep up with us. We don't want to be, you know. So, all right. So that was where I was heading with that. Was just, we're a more literate group. Our second question comes from Dan, another Facebook fan. Which universe has the sexiest superheroes or villains, and should it even matter? Well, of course it matters.
Yeah.
Well, it depends on what you mean by sexy.
Yeah, we talking brains, we talking
Yeah.
beauty, we talking the whole package.
The whole package, yeah.
Can anybody top Wonder Woman? I mean, honestly.
Well, Wonder Woman is, in that sense, I find her kind of, men don't really, and well, the men that I don't know about you guys, maybe you have your own preference, but
I don't
they
know.
find
If it's a Linda Carter Wonder Woman.
Ooh, don't do
they
that
find her a
one.
little
Yeah.
masculine, you know, like the masculinity kind of turns people off, and where I think that's where Marvel comes in a little bit better, because I feel like their women aren't as God, because
She-Hulk?
DC concentrates on people being very godlike, you know. That's their whole persona, is all their superheroes are very godlike, whereas you have these characters that are very relatable. So maybe in terms
Girl
of
Next Door kind of.
yeah,
Okay.
it was in terms of appeal, maybe that would be.
I think that I might just come down to like artistic choices. Like there are certain artists that kind of have that, just kind of like a kind of your stereotypical like anime, exaggerations of features and such. You know, I think at least currently, I think DC's probably got more artists along those lines. Like Jim Lee likes to do a lot of that, and he's a great artist. But I do find that like a lot of the Marvel characters are maybe it's due to the movies. You know, they're drawn in a more realistic like proportions and manner, and I think, like you said, that is a little more relatable, and therefore I think it's a little bit more attractive as well.
I think you're right. I think that happens right after the movies. Right after like the Avengers comes out, you know, you see Black Widow with much more realistic proportions, and you know, over time she starts to morph back into sort of a cartoony, more exaggerated form. You know, especially if they let Adam Hughes anywhere near the book, you know, all of a sudden they've got all kinds of curves going on.
I was always more partial to John Romita's work on The Amazing Spider-Man with Gwen Stacy and
Yeah.
Mary Jane Watson. And he had, his background was actually in romance comics, so he honed his craft doing, you know, realistic portrayals of women, so their features weren't exaggerated, but they were still drawn in cute, sexy ways and portrayed realistically. And that's what, you know, attracted me to them as a youth.
Okay.
You know, in the Freudian sense, these characters are drawn in a very specific way to appeal to a certain subconscious interest on the part of the male readers. Wonder Woman, for example, has the whole bondage fetish thing
Yeah.
going on, the golden lariat, the handcuffs.
Let's be honest, it's not all that subconscious. Saying,
Well, her creator was actually into alternative lifestyles. He lived with two women,
Oh, yeah.
you know, and there's,
She's the Betty Page of the comic world.
yeah.
well, and it was actually in the 1940s and when the book first came out, it was very sexualized. They have panels of just women bonding women and things like that. So, you know, does it really matter?
That's naughty.
Yeah, it's
Well,
very
don't
naughty.
forget all the time she got her legs wrapped around torpedoes.
Yeah.
Well, and
And she
how
loses
does she
her
lose
power.
her powers?
Yeah, if she's bound, she loses her power.
Yeah.
Yeah.
See, everybody forgets
Fascinating.
that's her one weakness. If you get those bracelets together, no powers.
Now, Storm, on the other hand, she was always supposed to be the untouchable goddess. And, you know, they tinkered with her character. They turned her into a kind of punk goddess for a while, and then they hooked her up with Black Panther. But as designed, that was supposed to be her appeal, the Madonna.
Well, you remember her original costume. Well, yeah, that was like super
The John
sexual.
Byrne stuff was off the
ooh,
hook.
I like
Yeah.
John Byrne had some issues, man.
Don't be hating on John Byrne now. I like
He
didn't
drew
say I didn't
beautiful
like
women.
him.
Yeah, he drew beautiful women.
Our third and final question comes from Dr. Rolina Thomas, a former panelist and professor at Fayetteville State. Comics continually evolve to speak to a new set of readers. Which universe speaks better to its current generation? Ooh.
I would just make the argument that Marvel does. I think they pay a little more attention to their younger cast of characters, Young Avengers. I think they deal with a lot of current social issues and such that maybe some of the DC books don't address quite as much. I thought Avengers Academy was a great example of that, of just taking like brand new characters and just putting them in situations where they can develop, in an environment they're maybe not like comfortable with. And I think that was probably their best example of new characters coming of age, like since like the original New Warriors, years ago. And it's a crime that Christos Gage doesn't have a regular Marvel book right now, for the record. So that would just be my argument. I mean, at least speaking to a younger generation of characters or of an audience, I think that Marvel's characters are a little more accessible and kind of show the struggles and stuff that like teenagers and kids go through these days, a little more so than DC.
And the X-Men are constantly reinventing that idea of the outsider, the angst that a lot of young teenagers go through, trying to find their place in society, not necessarily being judged based on their character, but kind of on superficial appearances. And so the X-Men can be used again and again and again as a way to kind of reaffirm the outsider status. And I think a lot of people gravitate towards that as well.
Yeah, I'm not surprised y'all pose those. Yeah, but see, I would look at like the run of Robin, where his girlfriend had HIV, and he had to deal with that. And how do they take that relationship? How do they go forward? So I mean, there are real life issues that they're dealing with. DC does try to, but like you said before, DC has a problem with that their characters are all the way at the top of the food chain. They're gods, whereas Marvel's characters tend to be more human. But when you think about younger readers and what they gravitate towards and how the companies treat them, DC has a whole line of books, and Marvel does too, but DC's books are targeting 3 and 4 year olds. Mm-hmm. Little kids that know who Superman is, who Batman is, who Wonder Woman is, and they know who Spider-Man is, and Captain America, and the Hulk, but they don't know who the New Warriors are and things like that.
Well, not only who they are, but they also make them, I'm not trying to say like shiny or anything, but they make them so, not really hyper masculine, but so symbolic that you really can't help but really pay attention to them. Whereas, not everybody knows who Deadpool is, so. But
would you want your 8-year-old reading Deadpool?
That's true, no, too.
Better read Deadpool than nothing at all, my friend.
I don't know if I agree with that.
Work with the mouth.
No, I'm not really sure. Okay, these are great questions, great answers, but that's all the time we have for today. A big thank you to our panelists, Cary Adkinson, Ivana Woodard, Heather Griffiths, and Garrett Steedly. I'm your host for Superhero Chat, Jonathan Chestnut. Remember, you don't have to be super to be a hero. Check us out on YouTube and Facebook at Bronco Television. Until next time, take care.